Hello, everyone. Hopefully you can hear me. Yeah, that sounds like it's working. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, if you are our special guest. Welcome to the Raise.dev Hacktoberfest Helpdesk. My name is Joe, and I'm the community manager here at Raise.dev. This is super exciting. This is our first Hacktoberfest Helpdesk show. We'll be doing this all month, 3 times a day as Hacktoberfest goes on. So I'm going to quickly walk you through what this is, what we're here to do, then I'll introduce our very special guest for today. So for those of you who aren't aware, which I think would be unusual, Hacktoberfest is a month-long celebration of open source organized by our friends over DigitalOcean, and we are here this month to help out with anything that you may need when it comes to Hacktoberfest. So Hacktoberfest is a great time to get your first open source contributions, or if you've had other things going on throughout the year, to make those contributions now in this month to earn some special limited edition swag. And sometimes committing to open source, especially if you're new to a project, can be really tough. So here at Waze.dev, we're all about helping people level up their careers and improve their development skills or other skills to do with professional software engineering. And so we want to make sure that you get all the help you need to be able to make your full pull requests this Hacktoberfest. So you can do that in a couple of ways. Our website for the help desk is raise.dev/Hacktoberfest. And from that site, you'll be able to submit questions, which we will then get to our special guests and review live here on the show. When we review those questions, we will let you know which show your question is being reviewed in, and we'll make sure you get the recording right after the show as well. So if you have any questions about your Hacktoberfest issues and PRs, you can submit them to that form. There's a box where you can put in the actual issue URL, so we're able to jump in and make sure we've got all the information we need to help you. So this being the first show, people are still getting warmed up and started with Hacktoberfest, so we don't have a whole lot of questions to get into today. So it's going to be more conversational. We're going to be chatting to Vaibhav and learning a little bit about him and his interests, and talking about Hacktoberfest at a high level, because people do have a lot of general questions about like how to get started with Hacktoberfest and open source, why would they do it, and that kind of thing. So we'll be doing that as well. So that leaves me to introduce our very special guest for the show. So I'm going to press the buttons and add him in. Everyone, please give a warm welcome to Vaibhav Sagar. Welcome, hello. Vaibhav. Welcome to the show. So let me move over to this one. Beautiful. So Vaibhav, why don't you tell everyone a little bit about yourself? I could read out the lovely bio you sent me, but then I'll be repeating information that I'm sure we'll get into. So go ahead and introduce yourself to the folks.
Sure. I don't really know what to say. I'm a software developer. I try to tell computers what to do, and sometimes they listen to me. Most of the time they don't though. I until recently was based in New York City, but I'm here back in Sydney in Australia, which is why it's the evening here, and I'm working remotely for a US company, and
awesome.
but like I guess it's all boring.
No, not at all.
Interesting stuff.
We'll definitely be getting into some of the things you sent over. I want to hear a lot about Recurse Center. I want to hear about Disco for sure.
As you alluded to, like outside of work, I really like electronic music, disco in particular, and I really like powerlifting. So one of the hardest things about the lockdown has been the inability to go to the gym, but that's changed now here in Sydney, and gyms are open again. So I'm very excited to be back.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think the obviously everyone is probably aware of the coronavirus and the pandemic and how that's changed our lives, that's a big part of the reason we're doing the help desk, because we're hoping to fill in some of the gaps that are kind of vacated by the physical events that aren't able to happen. So I think that's perhaps a good place to start, because you mentioned you're in Sydney, and normally you would be in New York, I guess, and you moved back because of the coronavirus.
Yeah, it's a long story. So
Yeah.
I, in my infinite wisdom, decided to get a new job in February, and I did.
Good
And,
timing, to be fair. Very good timing.
Yeah, it's like actually like surprisingly good timing. But the way that it works is, so I'm an Australian citizen. I'm a naturalized Australian citizen, and the visa that allows me to live and work in the U.S. is one that cannot be applied for inside the U.S. So you basically have to leave the U.S. and come back. And I'm just watching these like border walls go up around the U.S. and just like, oh my god.
Yeah.
So I like figured it would be a good time to like leave, get my visa stuff sorted, and come back. And so I initially went to stay with my sister who lives in Singapore.
Right.
So I went to Singapore, and I was like, okay, I'm going to come here, get my visa stuff, go back to the US.
Yeah.
And then like all the embassies closed. And then like a few months later, I found out that in fact, like if you're in Sydney, or in Australia, you can get your visas processed via the mail, or you can mail in your visa application. And I was like, oh, this is great. So I kind of like decided it would make sense to come to Sydney, and that's been like really good. So yeah, it's been good to be back.
Yeah, for sure. I feel like this is a good time to be in places where you have family and can be close to friends.
It's funny you say that, because I like I don't actually have any family in Sydney. My parents.
Oh no! Oh god, I'm so sorry.
It's all right. No, my parents live in Indonesia, but like it is in fact like I think I was honestly getting a little sick of living with my sister, and she was getting a little sick of me. So it's good that like
the cabin fever. Yeah. I get it. Cool. So so obviously you're in New York, and we've mentioned Recurse Center and your job there already. Let's tell us a little bit about your new job, if you don't mind talking about it. What are you changed in February, so I guess it's still quite new, and you've also been working on a very different time zone.
Yeah, working in a different time zone, which is very strange. I work very strange hours. But Elliot, so the new company that I'm working for is called Kimi. They have kiosks. They're trying to like they're in the locksmith industry essentially, and they're trying to. What they do is that they have a bunch of kiosks only in the US for now, where you can kind of go to the kiosk and like insert your house key or an RFID key, and they'll scan the key and cut you a new key.
Oh, interesting.
So it's pretty cool, and something I definitely wish were here in Australia. So I'm on their control systems team. So that's the team that. So it's really interesting. It's like it's actually like there's robotics involved, which I haven't quite touched yet. But so the interesting thing about this team is that they're mostly, the code base is mostly Python, but there is some Haskell, and like that's the thing that like attracted me to the position. And so far it's been really good. My team's really great, and everything's gone.
You said you're working on control systems. So I guess that's like as in actually interfacing with control of the hardware itself, and that's been done in Haskell.
Okay. Not exactly. So I think there's some of it's in. I think like there's I think that's still like low level like C, like Arduino stuff. But there is like other software that runs on the kiosk, because our kiosk is just a computer, and software that runs on it that does use Haskell. So I think our like credit card processing software, for example, is written in Haskell.
Fascinating.
So, it's like there's a whole bunch of stuff, and like a lot of it's in Python, some of it's in Haskell, and I think we're like slowly trying to like write more of it in Haskell and less of it in Python.
Interesting. Yeah. So I do have to make a brief detour for the viewers here. For anyone who knows me personally will know I'm a huge Haskell fan. It's the only programming language I feel comfortable in. And as Vaibhav probably knows, being a Haskeller is having the curse of no one wanting to talk to you about programming. So today we will be getting into Haskell a little bit because I'm very excited to talk to a fellow Haskeller. I guess another question I had about that is the quality control on those machines must be fascinating, because like presumably once you've had a key cut, so I've been to locksmiths before where they've cut me a key and I've walked all the way back to my flat and then the key doesn't work, right?
Yeah,
like it's not being cut properly.
Right, and this is a big problem for us as well, right? Because like we don't want to cut keys that like that our customers like just use and they just don't work. That would be very bad. So so I mean, we keep trying to get the error rate lower. But one interesting thing that we do that I think is kind of like unique to us as a company is that what we do is that we don't just look at the key and cut you basically trace around the key and cut you a new key. We try to look at the key, and based on our knowledge about how the manufacturers, like which manufacturer manufactured the key and what like different I think these are called biddings, like the different heights that each slot in the key can be.
Like each manufacturer's keys look totally different, right?
Yep. So we try to like make a model of the key such that we cut you a model of we cut you a key that resembles what your key like looked like when it was like fresh out of the factory or whatever machine like produced that incredible.
Huh.
So that's really that's something that's like it's pretty cool. Like I obviously knew nothing about keys in like February, but now I like know a little bit more, and it's pretty fascinating.
Yeah, that's such an exciting job and company to exist for me, because it's like one of those. Maybe this is just me being on Twitter too often kind of thing, but like it's a company that I just like would never have expected, and an application that I would never have expected. You know what I mean? Yeah, like it's super interesting. Cool. So I want to also chat to you about Recurse Center, and this is partly a very selfish question because I've very keenly followed Recurse Center and a bunch of the folks who are in it for a long time, and I've been so curious because it looks like such an awesome thing, an idea. Can you tell us a little bit about what it is and how you ended up like being there?
Absolutely. So like actually like the presence of the Recurse Center in New York is why I decided to move there. The Recurse Center is basically, well, it's a bit hard to describe because it sounds like boot camp adjacent, but it's not really. It's more like a programming retreat. So it's like where you can go to spend 1, 6, or 12 weeks working on whatever you want to work on, surrounded by other people who are also working on whatever they want to work on with the ultimate aim of becoming a better programmer. Amazing. So I did a batch in 2016, and I went to New York, and I was like, wow, this is amazing. I want to move here because another thing about so the Recurse Center is like kind of it is the in-person retreat, but after that you become part of this community with everyone else who's like attended the Recurse Center. And I think like at least one of the reasons that I decided that I wanted to attend is because I kind of like happened upon all these like cool programming things that were like really fascinating. And like the thing that kind of like the thread that tied them all together was like they were all done by Recurse Center alums or people like doing their batch or like after their batch. And I was like, wow, this is amazing. I want to be part of this community.
Yeah.
So I went there and I was like, oh, this is great. Fell in love with the Recurse Center, fell in love with New York. And I was like, okay, cool. I'm going to like move here. And then, I failed to move there for a few years and like eventually succeeded in 2018. And then I moved to New York. And well, I was like, oh, everything's great. Everything's going to be great forever. But like, and here we are. I'm back in Sydney.
2020 had to rock up and do its thing.
Happened.
So, but I guess like the Recurse Center, because lots of people, I've seen lots of people who like were once based in New York at the Recurse Center now be like elsewhere in the world, obviously. So I guess they also have a strong online community and
I mean, there are like I think like for example, there's a big RC community in San Francisco, right? So like there's a lot of people in tech in San Francisco who are part of the Recurse Center at one point, and there's a big communities in Berlin as well, and Montreal, and a bunch of other cities. Yeah. Unfortunately, not so much in Australia. I think there's like only a handful. Like there's maybe like 5 Recurse Center alums in all of Australia, which is like not that many.
Right. So, it's still not bad. I mean, it's been running a while now, but I guess I got the impression that the like each batch size isn't like overly huge, right? That there is like a somewhat.
Yeah, I think it's about 30 to 40 people right now per batch, and they kind of overlap. So the way that they do it is that every 6 weeks, like a new cohort of people come in and one cohort of people like leave. So it's like, and if you do a 12-week batch, then you end up like, overlapping like.
Right. So you get to pick up some of that experience of the people who are on the way out.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's one reason that they decided to do it is because I think before they did overlapping batches, they basically had to like, explain to everyone what RC was and knew like every time a new batch started.
Right. So obviously the big question is what did you join Recurse Center to work on? Like what was your
this is a
special project?
So my special project was I kind of went to the RC went to the Recurse Center at a time in my life when I was kind of like I just come off like doing a bunch of like PHP web development in like Drupal, and I was like sick to death of it, and I was like, wow, I don't like know if like this is for me, and I kind of decided that like the solution to my problem was to like learn Haskell, so do the exact like opposite, like as far away as possible from what I was doing before. So I was like, okay, so I was working on a Git implementation in Haskell. So
interesting.
Yeah, so Git is Git is many things, but it's like that it's at least the way that it's that the program exists right now. It's a suite of like shell scripts and C programs and Perl programs or whatever, but they're all
and Porcelain built on top of core.
Yes, exactly. and it all interoperates, but it like agrees on like a file format. So I was like, okay, I'm going to write like a parser for this file format. I'm going to write a serializer for this file format, because that's like, I guess, minimum viable Git. And that's what I was working on at RC.
Amazing, super cool. And how far along did you get with it? Were you happy with where you got to before the end?
Yeah, I mean, it works. So I kind of like I like started working on it before RC. So I worked on it some more during RC, and there's like two different file formats that Git uses. So it uses like what's called a loose object representation, where each like and then it uses a packed representation where everything's kind of like a whole bunch of things are smushed together into like one big file for like network transfer, etc. So I finished the loose object. Loose object representation is finished to my satisfaction, and I implemented most of the packed file representation. So I did a fair bit of implementation. That's awesome. It was pretty good. I was like, I kind of went in thinking I'm going to work on all these things, and I'm only going to work on my Git implementation like some of the time, but like it was just too interesting. So
that's super cool. Yeah, I have a huge soft spot for like re-implementations of Git in different languages. There's that I can't remember who is it by, but that amazing book of like rewriting Git in Python.
Isn't it Jeremy Coughlin?
Yeah.
Ruby, I think it's called Building Git.
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah. Like when I worked at GitHub, and people were like, I want to understand like Git at the low level and how it works under the hood. I was just like, here's some implementations of Git by other people. So that would have been an amazing resource. It's also a really interesting project, I guess, when like one of the more well-known projects in the Haskell ecosystem is Darks, like another kind of, I guess it's not really competing anymore, but another version control system that has very different methodology. So I guess you're a Git fan, and that's partly where that came from.
Yeah, it was more, I would say so. I think it's one of those things like I kind of like, that's probably like one of my superpowers as a developer is that I like, well, especially after working on this and like understanding how Git actually works, like I'm relatively comfortable with Git. So like even, in teams when people are just like trying to like do things in Git that, are confusing, I like understand like what's happening well enough that I can kind of like, okay, cool. Like we can figure this out together.
Right, for sure. Well, that leads us nicely into a tangent to talk about Hacktoberfest, given that everything has to be done on Git and GitHub. So I guess, have you participated in Hacktoberfest before? Do you have any of the t-shirts?
Yes. In fact, like I think my dad like wears my like I think last year.
That's amazing.
Like pretty often, I see it and it's like, oh, like it's good.
There's something really special about like family members wearing your tech swag. I remember I had a.
It is really funny.
Yeah, I sent when I first joined GitHub back when I joined, you could send like you basically staff could have any swag they wanted. So I sent my sister and at the time my newborn nephew like an Octocat baby grow and a GitHub hoodie, and just like my sister in rural Essex in a place that's probably never heard of GitHub walking around with a GitHub hoodie was very entertaining to me. So what was so you've done Hacktoberfest before. What was your start to open source? Like when did you first start committing to open source?
That's a good question. I think it was maybe like right after I graduated, or around the time that I graduated, like maybe a year or two. I think it was like a Python project. So like my first like love in programming languages was not in fact Git, it was like Python. And at one point there was this like project of like I think by Brett Cannon about like figuring out which projects were Python 3 compatible, something along those lines.
Interesting. Okay, so like helping with the transition between 2.7 and 3.
So I think there was like just a small like PR that I made for that.
Very cool.
And then just like tiny like edits to readmes and docs and stuff like that, and it just kind of like snowballs because like I'm a big proponent of like tiny typo fixes as PRs. I feel like some people maybe are not, but I am.
Yeah.
And because I feel like if you keep doing that enough, you get comfortable enough with the project that you end up making more meaningful contributions.
For sure, yeah. I think there's and this is like the questions we've had thus far on the help desk. I think this fits in perfectly, and to be honest with you folks, it fits in perfectly with what's kind of happening in Hacktoberfest in general. If you haven't, for those who are viewing and also for Vaibhav as well, if you haven't seen the last kind of day, Hacktoberfest is having a bit of a problem right now with spam PRs. Basically, a lot of people are really keen to get their t-shirt, and maintainers are a little bit frustrated. But I think the idea of making those small, meaningful contributions to settle into the project is really important, because rocking up to a project where you don't know the project, you don't know like the standards of that project, you don't know the maintainers, is really scary. But being able to make those small contributions, I think, is a great way into it. I think my one of the Hacktoberfest contributions that I have an unfortunate habit of accidentally cheating Hacktoberfest, because I've always, as long as I've been participating in open source, I've been at companies where helping people do open source is my job. So I remember I was at a meetup in 2016 showing people how to do pull requests at a Hacktoberfest meetup. And I was doing a demo of a pull request on a fake project that I had made. And I opened the pull request and suddenly had the realization, oh God, that was my fourth pull request. I've just accidentally completed Hacktoberfest by cheating. So I can't remember why I was telling that story, but to come back around to it. So when you first approach those projects and you're trying to find a small contribution to make, what kind of stuff do you look out for?
I'll be honest, I often will look at the README and if or in fact, if it's I look at the README, if there's a typo on the README, I think that's again, I'm a big proponent of tiny typo PR fixes.
Right.
But also if I'm looking at if it's something that I use, you look at the docs for something that you use and you notice a typo on the docs, so you notice that an example doesn't quite make sense. It is worth raising an issue. And I think at least in Haskell land, even in Python land, maybe there's enough projects that are maintained by a small group of people that you can kind of get a sense of who's open to your contributions and who isn't. Because I've had the experience of opening a PR and have someone just kind of be kind of rude, maybe not rude, but dismissive at least. I'm okay, cool. I know that it's not really worth my energy to engage in this again. So I think it's a process of feeling it out and I guess trying not to take things personally, because I help maintain an open source project as well, and I can totally understand after doing that, after having that experience on the other side of I don't really have the time and energy to do this change and anyway. So
no, absolutely. I think what you said there about being the community being small and so you can get in touch with people is widely applicable, obviously, even to the bigger communities. I think there's some projects are very well set up for making it clear to new contributors what the process is during Hacktoberfest. Hey, here's a Hacktoberfest issue, comment on it to claim this issue, and then you can work on it. Others are just sticking with their normal processes, and so when 1,000 PRs turn up on day one, it's a bit blindsiding. But if you are looking to, if a worry you wonderful viewers, thank you for being here, is making your first contribution, just shouting into the void on Twitter or in a Discord for the project you're interested in, being hey, what can I help with, is probably a really, really great place to start. So we mentioned Haskell a little bit. We've just mentioned contributing to Haskell. Obviously, I had a little snoop around your GitHub profile and was very excited by some of the projects you contribute to. What are the projects that you're keenly involved in at the moment?
Sure. So at the moment, I'm sorry, like I said, the project that I'm most involved in on GitHub is the iHaskell project. So So there's the Jupyter. So there's a Jupyter project, which is a multi-language notebook, and the way that it's multi-language is the kernels that implement backends for each of the languages that you're interested in. So iHaskell is a project that I did not start. It was started many years ago by someone else. His name is Andrew Gibianski, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. And again, we've never met, but through a series of strange events, I've become a maintainer, and I have commit access to this project now. So I've kind of taken over it, and I'm okay, cool. I'm going to make sure that this sticks around for the foreseeable future. So my main contribution.
Is that my internet or Vaibhav's internet? We appear. Oh, maybe it's my internet.
Oh,
Can you hear me? We're back. Yeah, I don't know who that was. It was one of us.
I don't know what happened there.
Yeah, the internet's magic. Anyway, so sorry, I lost you at. So you were explaining that you had been contributing to this project.
Yes, so I've been upgrading to keep up with the new Haskell releases, which is a bit more work than it sounds, because we use kind of the internals of the GHC API, which are not, there's not really a change log, there's not really any guide to upgrading, so you just I just compile until it fails and try to fix it up, and we have a reasonably good test suite, so that also helps catch anything that because unfortunately, the GHC API details, sometimes it's possible for things to compile and not work, which is kind of the worst place that you can be in Haskell.
I guess I'm going to ask you about Haskell in particular in a bit, but just as a brief aside for people viewing who haven't experienced Haskell or know what GHC is, one of the things with Haskell, which I think has become less of a priority recently, but like Haskell is a base for programming language research for a lot of people. And so the language doesn't necessarily care all that much about backwards compatibility to the extent that some other languages do. It's becoming more of a priority, but there used to be like a solid principle of actually we don't care at all, just break everything. So upgrading from language version to language version can be very stressful. Yeah. Sorry, go on.
Oh no, sorry, I was done. I was just like it's honestly like but another thing about Haskell, which people. I'm unsure how much to like push this as like a real thing, but in a sense, like Haskell does have the property that if the code that you're writing compiles, then it probably does something. Yeah, it does something. Might not do the thing that you want, but it does something.
Right. Yeah.
So in combination with like a decent test suite, which I inherited also, it's been possible to kind of upgrade relatively painlessly. Like it's once I figured out like. Again, basically I got this project and I didn't really get like a guide on how to do anything. I just kind of like inherited it and had to like figure stuff out for myself. And after having done the process like 2 or 3 times, I think I'm like much better at being like, okay, these are changes that need to happen. Like I know who to reach out to because again, the Haskell community is small enough that like I can in fact go on the IRC to like the GHC devs channel and be like, hey, this thing is weird. I don't understand. And then like someone will explain it to me.
Simon Pete and Jones drops in from the ceiling and helps you out. So I have a couple of things from this. So first of all, I guess it's just more of a comment, but like it must have been with your like early background doing Python, this sounds like the perfect project, right? With like Jupyter and its kind of strong Python foundation, and then like you get to bring your new language to that. That must be really interesting to be able to still kind of keep up with both your communities, because obviously one of the things that right now Python has found a home with is data, and that's so core to what it's doing.
Yeah, definitely. There's not actually that much Python in iHaskell, but the reason that I kind of got knew about the project in the first place is because I was looking for a nice like REPL for Haskell. And if you've used Haskell, then like at least I personally am not the biggest fan of GHCI. Like it works, but it's very like it seems very minimal. And at least when I was learning Haskell, I was looking for something a bit like a bit friendlier. And I found iHaskell and I was like, oh, this is great. That's kind of how I got into it. And the reason that I knew to like look at Haskell or like Jupyter projects is because I'd used Jupyter in the past and I was very impressed by like how nice an IDE it is. Or like maybe not an IDE, but like definitely something between a REPL and an IDE. Yeah,
it's a fascinating development environment that like you can. First of all, one of the things I really love about it is like obviously it's a text editor, but then like the fact that everything can be executed as you go along. It has that REPL feel, but it's like it has. Again, this is like a very Haskell thing, but like there's a thing that's very popular in Haskell circles called literate programming, which is like where essentially you write an essay and it happens to have executable code into it. And so notebooks have always been really appealing to me from that perspective, in that it's basically like a better idea of that a better expression of that initial idea.
Yeah, in some ways, like I feel like current notebook environments. So again, this is one of those things where one of the problems with notebooks is that it's very easy to get yourself in a state if you execute cells like out of order, where like you have something that like seems to work, but like nobody else can reproduce what you just did because you edited cells in the meantime and changed them around. So in that respect, like I feel like it's a different take on literate program, and I like it in some way. And I have like in fact written blog posts in like as notebooks because you can export notebooks to Markdown, and so I just do that and I like pop it on my blog and just like great, this was like really easy, and I know that the code works because I ran it in sequence before.
Right.
So amazing. Like some aspects of it I really like. Some aspects of it I'm just like, oh, so this is like really interesting project. I think I forget what it's called, but somebody made something like a notebook environment for Julia that like does like data dependencies that kind of like tracks that like so you can't get in that state where like you have some result at the end, but nobody else can reproduce it because you changed.
I see. So like it tracks like what data you've imported and where you're fetching it from and that kind of thing.
Yeah, but also like if you change some cell and like change a cell, the value of some cell, like kind of like a spreadsheet, like other things get recomputed. At least that's the impression that I got, and I was like, wow, this is cool. I wish we had this for Haskell.
Right. Very cool. Neat. So the other thing I wanted to talk about on this was you went through this transition from being like a contributor to actually a maintainer of the project. What was that like? Like, how did that, like, it's a big responsibility shift from just being like a casual contributor to a maintainer. Tell us a little bit about that.
It kind of is, but it kind of is, well, so what happened was in, I think 2016, so GHC 8 came out. and GHC8 was a significant change, like significantly new version of GHC from the previous version, which was I think 7.10. And iHaskell, like Andrew just didn't have the time or the energy to like upgrade it to GHC8. It was a fair bit of work because I think the API changed a fair bit. So so someone else, like I think his name's Andre Barbu.
Right.
I mean, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, he went ahead and kind of merged a bunch of PRs and what other people had made and kind of like polished everything up and got a version of iHaskell that worked with GHC8. And I was like really missing this. I was like, oh, I refuse to upgrade my projects to GHC8 until I can like use them in iHaskell.
Right.
So I was like really happy about this. And after a while, some people like, there's like somebody raised an issue is like, hey, why don't we just merge these GHC8 changes back into the main iHaskell? Because Andre was also like, I'm not really interested in, making this a PR to iHaskell. I'm just happy to like, I just want something that works with GHC8.
You just want it to work, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I just want it to work, exactly. And so Andrew at this point was like, okay, well, Andre, I'm going to give you like commit access. If you want to merge it. And this is the point where like I chimed in and I was like, hey, like, if you don't want to do it, I'm happy to do it. I know how to merge PRs. Like, it's not hard.
Right.
You just click a button. And anyway, so like I think a day or two passed, and then Andrew was like, fine, I'll give you commit access as well. And I just kind of like took it and I ran with it. I was like, so I merged the PR, like I'm not sure if I cut a new release. I think I did.
Yeah.
Which is also my first experience of I guess. So the Haskell package ecosystem relies on this site called Hackage. So it's my first experience of like using Hackage.
Right, which is a nightmare.
It's so I'm actually a Hackage trustee as well. So it's funny you say that. I'd love to like chat more about.
I mean, it's been a very long time. I had to release a Hackage package for my dissertation, and I just remembered the big problem I had was getting the Hackage crawler to actually like find and use my Haddock documentation. It just like would not do it.
Yeah, I have that problem with iHaskell as well. I think like even our Haddocks don't get picked up for some reason. But yeah. So anyway, so my first experience doing that, and I had like a couple of things that I wanted to change about the project, like just like compatibility things. So I wanted it to be. So there's this package manager called Nix, which I like a lot, and I wanted to be able to like package it. Nix. Okay, good. Yeah. So I wanted to like get it working with Nix, and I wanted to get it. I wanted to make sure that it, like this didn't happen again, where like 8.2 comes out and we just kind of like iHaskell languishes. So that's kind of what I decided to do, and no one else seems to mind. In fact, like, I think I've had at least one person tell me that it's very thankful that I took over iHaskell because it would have died without me, which I don't think is true, but it's nice to hear that from someone.
Yeah, for sure. That's a really important part. And like going back to what we were talking about earlier about the strain of open source maintainers in some situations, there is like a stunning amount of projects out there that are used by a lot of people that really only have one or two maintainers, which is one of the like things that DigitalOcean and certainly we hope that comes from Hacktoberfest, which is like some projects pick up some new lifelong contributors. And I feel like we need like, that like dogs aren't just for Christmas, they're for life thing. We need that for Hacktoberfest, where it's like a project isn't just for Hacktoberfest, it's for life.
Just for Hacktoberfest, for life. Yeah.
Adopt a project this Hacktoberfest.
Yeah, that's interesting, right? Like, because I think it's Nadia Iqbal who like talks about open source.
Yes, roads and bridges.
And I haven't read her work. I really would like to read more of it, but it's definitely something that comes to mind. And I don't know, like, in my day job and in all my previous jobs, I've relied so much on the open source contributions of other people. And like, as a maintainer, I feel like I'm like giving back just a little bit, but it's like, it's not enough, like there is no like real accounting for like how much I benefited from contributions of other people.
Yeah, for sure. So we mentioned Nadia Iqbal just then. Nadia Iqbal, for those of you who haven't run into her work, it's hard to describe her career. She's bounced around a bunch of Silicon Valley companies, basically forging her own research path into open source. And she actually just published a book on all of the work that she's done in that area. She also has a report that's available for free online called Roads and Bridges, which is looking at basically the infrastructure of the internet and open source and the burden of maintainers and this kind of thing. Really fascinating stuff. Would highly recommend it. Rad, cool. So we've spoken about these things a lot, but I realize some people in the audience, they may not be familiar with them. So let's get a little bit at the ground level. Why do you like Haskell? Tell us about your choice. Yeah. So we had a great question yesterday on the stream, on our first stream for Raise.dev, where someone was basically asking like, what I'm getting into programming.
what
programming language should I choose? Yeah, and we were basically saying like it's about application, it's about like your personal interests and stuff as well. And I think that's really interesting. One of the things that John got into was that like your choice of language doesn't define your career, which I agree with. But on the other hand, for Haskellers, it kind of does, because there's like one industry that uses it, which is finance, right? So that's why I'm really excited to hear about your company. So yeah, I've kind of nicked that question from you, but yeah, I'd love to hear how you got into it and why you think why you like it.
I think Haskell. Well, like first of all, like if someone were to come up to me and say which language should I learn first, I would say JavaScript or Python, like in that order. Like I wouldn't go like Haskell, because I feel like JavaScript is like widely applicable in ways that like Haskell like just isn't right now, and Python is like I think easy to learn and like easy to apply and like very well represented industry in ways that Haskell just isn't. But the reason that I got into Haskell, so actually like my first exposure to Haskell was at uni. So at uni, my first ever like programming course at the Australian National University was in Haskell, and I was like, oh, this is cute, like I think I did pretty well at that course, but like it just isn't practical, because I kind of like bought into the whole idea of like, oh, this just isn't practical. And then I ended up tutoring that course as well, which is like it's the equivalent of being a TA in like the US. So I did that, and I was like, oh, this is cool. This is like nice. But again, I didn't really know Haskell. I didn't really know any Haskell, just enough to like, just a little bit more than a student. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
As long as you know more than the students in the year below you, you can get by.
Exactly. So and then but anyway, so then after that I got out of uni, and I got a job at a place that used Scala, this was a terrible job, by the way. I'm very glad I'm not there anymore. But there was an interesting experience to be like, oh, people actually do use functional programming in industry. It's not just like for academics. And then as I mentioned, I had that really horrible I had the PHP job, which I was just like and. So I was in Canberra at the time in Australia, and I had friends and colleagues. Well, not colleagues. I had friends who were working at places like the CSIRO, which had Haskell teams, and other places were like using Haskell or other kinds of functional programming as well. So it's kind of like increasingly apparent to me that these people like seem to be just generally happier and like with their lot in life than I was. So I was like, oh, maybe I should I should try to do this Haskell thing again, and like see if I take it seriously, maybe we'll go somewhere. So then I did my bachelor's research center. I like wrote a bunch of Haskell, and I was like, oh, this is dope. I like totally want to like get a job doing this. And again, it took a few years, but in the end, I got there.
Amazing, cool, very neat. And the other technology I wanted to get into a little bit was Nix, because Nix is still kind of new, and I guess it's very popular in like functional programming circles. But as a package manager, it's definitely starting to gain popularity, and now there's an operating system based on these ideas as well. Can you tell us a little bit about like what Nix is and how it differs from like the usual package management approach?
Sure. So right after my bachelor at RC, I tried to get a job in the US, right? And I failed miserably. But instead, what I ended up doing is I moved to Singapore, and I got a job at this company called Zalora, which is like an e-commerce company, kind of like I think ASOS in the UK. And I'm sure there's equivalents everywhere else. But so the interesting thing about this job is that I was on the ops team, and we used Nix and NixOS for all our stuff. So so that's kind of how I got to Nix. Nix is a package manager, and it's kind of like Git for packages, in the sense that so one way that Git like achieves what it achieves is that it kind of has this like chain of hashes. So everything has a hash of like what came before it, and it looks the same way. Like your outputs have the hashes of the inputs, which means that every time the inputs change, like the software that's building your outputs knows that the outputs will have changed also. And correspondingly, if the inputs don't change, the outputs don't have to change. And in fact, like Nix itself will just not build something a second time, because it's like, oh, I see that I already have the thing that you've asked me to build. Here it is.
Right.
So it allows you to do like really interesting things around caching, really interesting things about like around reproducibility. And the reason I mentioned like my experience using it at like Zalora on the ops team is that it was an amazing, like it worked so well that I was like absolutely sold on it. I was like, this is amazing. And
So what kind of problems does that approach solve? Like, so one of the big things that's spoken a lot about with npm and with Cabal, the Haskell pack. Well, I won't call it package manager. People get mad at me. is like this idea of like circular dependencies and these kind of things. Like, could you tell us a little bit about some of the package managed problems that you think Nix helps with?
Sure. I don't know I don't really know if we do handle circular dependencies that well, but I guess a lot of our well, as at least if you're on an ops team, and what you're trying to do is you're trying to ensure that the software that you've just built, that your devs have just built, is deployed consistently across all the machines. Right? That's like I think if your software can't really do that, it's not very good. Right. You're not going to have a good time as an ops person. And Nix allows you to kind of, because you can it'll actually like transparently like copy a bunch of things over. In fact, like, so you can actually like what you can do is that you can pretend to Nix that, hey, I want you to build the software from scratch on all these machines, and Nix is like smart enough to go, oh, I see I already built it before. I'm just going to copy it over.
Right. Okay.
So like that, like, so you can like imagine that you're building stuff from scratch each and every time, even though in practice that's not what's happening. And like the time savings that come from not doing that are like apparent to you. So it allows you to have like a consistent set of software on all the machines. If you want to upgrade stuff, you can like upgrade only the bits that actually need to be upgraded. So if you have like an incremental upgrade, it allows you to kind of build just do the upgradey bits and then copy that over. And basically like, it's like the way that it switches things over is that it switches things over in an atomic way by using like symlinks amongst other technologies, which means that like from a user's perspective, your system is like working, and it continues to work, but it's just switched from one working state to another working state. So again, like it's basically it's an ops dream, and I'm like a huge fan. And I was like absolutely like, so I run it on all my personal laptops now. I'm running it on this laptop that I'm speaking to you on. It's pretty great.
Nice, that's awesome. And also impressive to have Wait, you're running the package manager or the OS on this laptop?
The OS.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
So so I mean, you can run the package manager like just by itself, but if the nice thing about the OS is that it allows you to use the same kind of ideas to manage services on your machine as well.
Which is a fascinating thing. Like, obviously, like a lot of the Linux ecosystem, like the different Linux distributions, one of the big differences between them in different styles is the package manager. But I don't think it's kind of the other way around with Nix, right? Like there's a distribution that happens to have like a different package manager or an opinionated package manager, but like the Nix OS distribution exists purely by the package manager and not like the package manager existing for the operating system. If you get what I mean.
Yes.
It's a really interesting approach to that problem. Cool. So to kind of take a step back, so we've explained the technologies we were talking about in relation to your projects a little bit. So kind of getting back to the projects that you work on and you maintain, are y'all welcoming Hacktoberfest contributors? If folks in the audience wanted to learn about Haskell or wanted to contribute to the
iHaskell, absolutely,
iHaskell.
So I have the problem that it's just me, and I feel like I don't think of like iHaskell as a project that's like undergoing lots of like new feature work. I think of it as like largely maintenance mode. Just because I don't have, and there are a whole bunch of like really friendly other contributors who like contribute occasionally, but most of the time it's like just me kind of making sure that it continues to work with newer GHCs. But if people were interested in like contributing and like looking at the issues that are open and trying to like fix them or like coming up with new things that they want, I'm absolutely very much open. So I haven't gone ahead and done I don't think I should probably go like after this call like
sorry to put you in a spot where you have to go do some work.
Get the label sorted, get the tag sorted so that people can come in and make changes if they want. But absolutely, very 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 open. I just don't know if like again like because we use like kind of the gory details of the GHC API. I'm not sure if it's the best. Best intro to.
Do you have any recommendations for people who want to learn Haskell this Hacktoberfest, like where they should start?
That's a really good question. There's this like group of two people that I am aware of. I think they go by the name Kawainik, and they have.
I know Kawainik.
Yeah, they're lovely. I think I met both of them briefly once. So they I think they have like a bunch of projects that are. I think they're like at least beginner friendly, so that's a good place to like start looking. I think they have like issues that they would like help with, and I think they're very very focused on like making Haskell like more open to outside contributors, easier to learn, all those wonderful things.
Yeah, for sure. I just posted in the chat. They announced the other day they're doing a 4-part Haskell course during Hacktoberfest.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah, so I've just posted that in the chat. It's a great recommendation. I'd forgotten about them. And Quinic is really, I'm super happy this initiative exists in part because due to various aspects of the community, some parts of the Haskell and functional programming community at large have picked up a bit of a poor reputation. Yes, yeah, elitist, and also there's like some skeezy, weird corners. And Quinic are very much a response to that, as in terms of being like, hey, there are some welcoming parts of this community. Please come hang out.
Absolutely. There's I mean, I try to like, I 100% agree with what you just said, and I also like try to like focus on or like emphasize the parts of the Haskell community that are welcoming and are friendly, because those do exist. There's like there's these two people, Julie Marnucci and Chris Martin, who are
they do great
these internet friends of mine. Yeah, they have a website called Type Classes, where they have like Haskell learning material, which I think is like probably the best Haskell learning material on the internet. It's very apparent that at least Julie has a background in pedagogy, which really comes across.
Yeah, and she first started writing whilst she was learning Haskell.
Yeah,
basically took her first-hand learning experiences, like, oh, this is what sucks about the learning materials. Let me fix that. That's great. Yeah, really awesome.
Yeah, so I mean, like, if one wanted to learn Haskell like this month or start learning Haskell this month, I think I would like look. Even if you're not ready to like pay for type classes, if Julie and Chris both have like blogs with really good material, some of their type classes stuff is like freely available, and definitely look at Quinic. Or IRC can be like a bit like confronting, but if one is brave enough, one should hop on IRC in the Haskell channel and like just see if you can kind of find a place for yourself there, or Twitter, I guess. Just ask Haskell questions.
Yeah, I mean, there's the Twitter community is basically responsive as the IRC one. I think the IRC one is difficult as well because, I mean, IRC in itself, if you're new to programming, getting into an IRC programming channel is in itself not the most natural thing. But I've had like the IRC Haskell channel is very, very responsive. But yeah, as you said, they do have, and this goes for anyone in any position where they're answering questions. There is like a certain deja vu to like, oh, we've had this question like for the 50th time, and it's in the docs. Please just go read the docs.
There's also some people who are just like not friendly, and like that comes across. Like, it's not just the frustration. Like, I feel like the frustration is to an extent forgivable. There's some people who just like, I don't know. I think it's hard. It's a bit hard to describe. I think at some point, like, so there's this person that I know. Her name's Sumana, and she has this really interesting blog post about like what a community is. And
interesting.
Yeah, like absolutely fascinating. And I think about that a lot when I think about like communities now, because a lot of things that I describe as communities are not really like communities by the definition that she uses. Mm-hmm. And I think it's interesting because like at some point I like have to remind myself, and I have to kind of like be explicit about the fact that the Haskell like community, as I call it, is just an agglomeration of people, right? And most people I think are nice enough. Yeah. Some people are really lovely, and some people are really not. And it's hard to kind of like, when I try to like try to sell people on like Haskell, it's kind of I try to like figure out which parts of the community to point them to. And
for sure, it's difficult in I guess like that question, like what is community in terms of like what as actually what the links between those people are and how meaningful they are. Like how meaningful or significant really is the fact we use the same tools. Like if you apply that to any other industry, like can you imagine there being like hammer conference for all the carpenters who use hammers to come together and like chat and like calling that out like, oh, I'm in the community of hammer users. Like it's just absurd, right? And it's something we do everywhere in programming, but it doesn't necessarily have to, but when you think about it, doesn't have to define your experience of that thing at all, because it's not that strong a link, right?
I think
what we want to do with these tools.
Exactly. Yeah. So like to your point, like over I think the last year or so, maybe a bit more than that, I've been trying to like dissociate myself from like being like a Haskeller, because as much as I love Haskell, like I feel like it's like really limiting kind of for me to be like, this is the thing that I love, and like I would identify so strongly with it, because it also like means that like if bad things happen in the Haskell like ecosystem,
you are like, associated, right?
I'm associating myself with those bad things, and I'm just like, like I think I would rather associate myself with like, problem solving or like programming or like something that's like just a bit more like bit more broad and a bit more like aligned with like what I actually care about. Because I've had like, like obviously I've had experiences where I'm just like, oh, like, maybe my next job won't be a Haskell job. Like currently I'm writing Haskell, but like it's entirely possible that like my next job won't be a Haskell job. Like, will I not be part of the Haskell community? Like, will I not be a Haskeller? Like, I'll still like Haskell.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, it gets into like our founder was talking yesterday about like people taking their first steps in the career and how many other developers are doing that, and about using your interest outside of development as kind of like your unique selling point in terms of like not just your experience, like, oh, hey, I have experience in like the clothing industry and now I'm in software development, and like using those two things together, but also in terms of like, hey, these are the causes and the things I care about and the change I want to see in the world and the kind of problems I care about, and I just happen to use this tech stack to address those problems. And that's the far more interesting thing, I think. And it's also interesting you say that you're distancing yourself from that title. I think there's even like a wider reaction to that I've seen in the industry recently, where it's not just people distancing themselves from their titles, but also like, I feel like for a very, very long time, tech communities were very strongly in like, hey, I am this job at this company, and that is who I am, and that is my bio. And so I really loved your bio. It's like, I tell computers to do things, and I love disco, and that is more about me than where I work, and that's really interesting.
Absolutely, yeah. Because again, like as somebody who like I changed my job in like February, like does that mean I'm a different person now? No, I don't think so. Like I'm the same person.
Right.
Someone else pays my like rent and buys me food.
Yeah, for sure. And I guess to bring this back around to Hacktoberfest, I think it's an important thing to mention now, because for a lot of people, Hacktoberfest is an opportunity to get a first start in open source, and open source is lauded a lot as like a way to secure your tech career and to get the first step in tech career. And it's definitely helpful for that, but you don't have to these points, like you don't have to attach yourself too strongly to like what you're doing today. You're more than your contributions. And while this will help for sure, there are other ways to achieve those things if you don't manage to get a PR in the project that you really hoped you did this time. So to bring it back to a slightly less serious point, Will asked a question in the chat. Has anyone used Agda?
Has anyone used Agda? I have not used Agda.
You've not used Agda? Yeah. Have you used any of the I guess, more opinionated types? Yeah, it's just nice, cool.
Yeah. So I mean, I think Agda is really cool. I've definitely. So I used to live in Singapore when I was working at Zalora, and I remember like attending this Haskell meetup where somebody gave a really interesting presentation that mostly went completely over my head using Agda. So I mean, I'm very enamored of it. I think it would be cool, but like I personally know, like I think I've worked through like some of the Idris book. I think like the first couple of chapters. Yeah, I think that's really interesting. In fact, I have like a talk that I did at a conference called Bang Bang Con, a 10-minute talk about typed holes, which are like a feature of Haskell that kind of came from Agda, where like you can kind of use the computer to like help you write your program, which is something which I think is like really fascinating, something unique to like strongly typed. Well, not. Maybe not unique.
It's like, okay. No one's gonna comment about using the phrase strongly typed. It's fine.
It's a language. It's a feature that I think is like really like sold me on. One of the things that really sold me on languages like Haskell and Agda and Idris.
Awesome. And it's funny you mentioned the book. Is that Edwin's book, right? Yeah, cool. So I just want to mention. Yeah, awesome. I just want to mention as an aside that Idris is hilarious to me because Idris is by a programming language researcher in St. Andrews called Edwin Brady. And it always blows my mind because it's like one of the most advanced programming languages out there. It does like a lot of things with types and dependent types that like aren't being done anywhere else. And Edwin Brady is also the man behind Whitespace, the joke programming language where you code in entirely tabs and spaces. So it's just like the duality of man, Idris, and Whitespace. It's so good.
It is wonderful.
We get a lot of joy from it. Awesome, cool. Let me quickly. So I think I've like drained your brain of all the questions I had for you. So let's quickly run through the Hacktoberfest Helpdesk submission list, and all the questions in there are very high level, but it's I think a good time to check in on those. So we have a question actually that came in just before our show went live. Which is how to start a pull request. So I think there's multiple routes in on this one. I'm not sure if they're talking from the technology standpoint or from like the actual like Git workflow standpoint, or from like the social standpoint.
Right.
I think we can give this one a go.
Okay. So yeah, so again, it depends on your familiarity with the project. I mean, imagine if you're asking this question, like you're probably coming from a place where like you're looking at a project and you have an idea for a change, but you don't know if like one, it's a good idea, two, if like someone else has implemented this already, three, if the maintainers will even accept your change if you want. So I think a good way to start a pull request is to open an issue on the project.
Mm-hmm.
Be like, hey, there's this change that I think would be a good idea. What do y'all think?
Yeah.
And if the maintainers respond like promptly, and by promptly I mean in a day or two, then you have a signal about whether they think it's a good idea or not and how like responsive they are.
Mm-hmm.
And if they don't respond, then you could go ahead and make the PR anyway. Like make the code change, click the GitHub PR, make a PR button. Or you could like look at a project, and you can look at a different project. There's lots of different projects out there.
Right. Awesome.
That's how I would start a PR. But I mean, if you're in a position where like you've made a few PRs to this project before, you kind of know, you have like somewhat of a relationship with the maintainers, then you can just like make the PR, and like they can be like, oh, you actually don't need this, or they can be like, oh, thanks so much. Like I try to be like really like, I think there's like again a handful of contributors to iHaskell, for example, who like I think one of them kind of like always compliments me on like how quickly I merge his PRs, and they're always like good PRs. So yeah, it really depends.
Cool. And I'm going to answer this from the technical side, just in case anyone watching and this question asker doesn't know how to like go about doing the mechanics of a pull request. Basically, go to the project that you want to contribute to. Up in the top right of GitHub, you'll see a button that says fork. Press that. That'll make a copy of the repository under your GitHub username. In that repository, you can then make your changes. And then when you go back to the original repository on GitHub, you'll get a prompt to open a pull request, which will bring your changes from your copy of the repository to that copy of the repository and open them in a pull request that the maintainer can review it for you. So neat. We have a question from the audience. Thank you, Sashrika. Whilst figuring out which project or organization we should contribute to, should a developer think about the tech stack or languages they already know, or should one focus on the idea that interests them and learn as necessary? So I guess to put that a different way, when you're looking for new projects to get involved in, do you focus on your tech stack or your end result, I guess?
It depends. So it's like if you like, and I have done this in the past where I'm like, okay, I want to make as many contributions as possible. Like when you're like dipping your toes into open source, I think it can be like really like exciting to like just make a whole bunch of contributions. And in that case, I think it's best to focus on the tech stack or languages that you're familiar with, because then you're most empowered to like actually execute on the changes that you want to make. But if there's a project and you're like, oh, this project is so cool, I wish I could like contribute to it. I wish, like I want to be like a person who contributed to this project. Then it may or may not be in your, in a language that you know or in a tech stack that you're familiar with. But then you probably like will want to like figure it out if it's not.
Right. Awesome. Cool. I hope that answers your question, Sashrika. So yeah, other than I think a lot of our other questions in the Helpdesk are ones that we've answered along the way. So it's our first Hacktoberfest stream. We've emptied the Helpdesk already. We are ahead. So just a reminder to folks who are watching, if you have any questions about your contributions, you can go ahead and submit them to raise.dev/Hacktoberfest. And from there, we will be able to get an answer to you. So those question askers who asked through our form that we've just answered, if you're in chat, you may have seen me create a stream marker. I'll be sending them a recording of our answer afterwards so that they have the answer they need. So I think that leaves us to a good place to wrap up this show. So again, thank you so much, Vaibhav, for joining us. It's been lovely to chat with you. I actually got a text message during the stream saying from someone saying they didn't expect to come away from this with an inclination to do a 4-part Haskell course. So I think my personal goal for Haskell evangelism this year has been met. Yeah.
Same.
And yeah, thank you again so much for joining us. I will move you from the stream now, so I have to run through some brief outro notes. So again, thank you, and thank you for everyone who participated and asked questions for Vaibhav, and thank you to our Helpdesk submitters as well. So catch you on the other side, Vaibhav.
Take care.
So thanks, folks. As I mentioned, we'll be doing multiple streams a day. So we're back again in a couple of hours at 4 p.m. CEST with Wilhelm Klopp. We're going to be chatting to him about his interest in his company. Wilhelm develops a very well-known Slack plugin called Simple Poll and has worked with me in the past at GitHub as well. So we're going to be chatting to him about his developer journey and his open source journey. So tune in again for that, and we'll be answering any of your questions again as you have them. And then later on tonight at 9 p.m. CEST, 10 p.m. CEST and 4 p.m. New York time, Eastern Daylight Time, we will be joined by the lovely gang from Major League Hacking, Swift and Jonathan Gottfried. And we'll be talking to them again about all kinds of things open source, their journeys, how they MLH, where it came from, that kind of thing. And that will be hosted by our founder, John Britton. So just a couple of reminders for you all. If you have anything that you need help with in Hacktoberfest, you can submit that through our Hacktoberfest help desk. You can find that at raise.dev/Hacktoberfest. We are here for all questions, big or small, whether it's something high level and philosophical like why open source and how do I do it. We can help you with that. But also there is places where you can insert a link to the issue or pull request that you're working on. Tell us what technologies it's in, and we will find a guest who can get into that problem live with us on air and really get down into the code. So even if it's like as specific as, I have this error message, how do I fix it? We can help you through that problem. So feel free to submit those questions there. We're also in the Hacktoberfest Discord. So that's discord.gg/Hacktoberfest. And you can catch us in the Raise Devs channel or at Raise Devs on Twitter. Finally, as mentioned, we're doing this every day, 3 times a day, and we have some really fantastic guests lined up. Fascinating people like Vaibhav, and later on today, Wilhelm, John, and Swift. But we also have some incredible guests from all over the world. We've got Cassidy Williams coming on at some point, which I'm very excited about. We have the team from Dev2. They're going to be doing some live programming on Forum, the software that runs the Dev2 site. They're going to be doing that a couple of times. So you can find the schedule at twitch.tv/raisedevs/schedule. Twitch only allows us to upload the schedule for the coming week. So that schedule right now is for today and tomorrow. Over the weekend, we'll get the schedule for the next week put up there for you as well. And just a final reminder from us here at Raise Dev. That's completely the wrong asset. There we go. Raise Devs is a resource for you if you are trying to level up your career and take next steps in your career, whether that's getting your first developer job or moving on and getting a promotion or changing industries or becoming a manager, anything like that. You can get free coaching from us now whilst we're in early access. With your coach, you'll set a goal and work towards it to level up your skills, whichever skills you're most interested in developing. Our goal is to help you improve your capacity as a team member of a software engineering team. And we're excited to work with you all on that. So you can find out more information about that at raise.dev. And other than that, thank you so much for joining me today. It's our first stream. We're doing this for a month, which is important because this is going to change. What we do is going to change. It's going to change depending if we get questions. It's going to change depending if we don't get questions. It's going to change depending on what you want to see. So if you have any feedback for us, or there's anything that you would like to see, or you'd like to be a guest on the show, drop in to any of those channels I mentioned, or you can get me on Twitter at JNA_SH. Tell me what you would like the show to be about and what you'd like to see, who you'd like to see on it, and we will do our best. We've got some fun things planned. We're at some point just going to dive into Hacktoberfest issues and talk about those. We were talking about doing some pair programming as a team, which anyone who's ever seen me program will know what a disaster that's going to be. It would just be John laughing at me for 4 hours. It's going to be great. But that's all going to be super fun. So if you have any things you'd like to see, do let us know, and we will try our best to do that. But other than that, that's it for now. I'll be back with you in about 2.5 hours. 2.5 hours for our stream with Wilhelm. So I will see you then if you're joining us. If not, we'll see you another day. Thank you very much.